everybody, welcome back to Industry Night with me, Nycci Nellis, the show that takes you on a deep dive on the goings-on in and around the hospitality industry. Every week, I get to tell you an incredible story about what's happening, not just locally, but nationally and sometimes internationally in and around the food, wine, and hospitality scene. So if you're new here, a little bit about me. That buzzer is for something later in the show. A little bit about me. I've been covering the DC food, wine, and hospitality scene for the last 20 years. You can check out the list, areyouwantit.com, the online e-zine that tells you everything happening in the DC metro area. Of course, you follow me at NYCCINELLIS, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Threads, LinkedIn, and now this Industry Night is on YouTube. Don't forget to check out Foodie and the Beast every Sunday at 11 a.m. on 1500, DC area's only food and wine variety show. I am the foodie. My husband David is the beast, and that show has been on air for 15 years, and it's always a ton of fun. Okay. If you pay attention to my social media, especially Instagram and Insta stories, you will see that I have been out and about. I'm trying to think of whether or not I should name this as like a specific section of the show or just get into it. But I think something like, where's Nycci? Or what has she been eating now? Or I don't know. Text me, you tell me what you think I should do, or tweet me or thread me, whatever it is, get in touch and tell me your thoughts. Okay, so I'm gonna go back a couple of weeks because it's been a minute. The Rammys. So if you've checked out the list or also my Insta feed, you saw that I was sashaying my butt across stage at the Rammys. It's such an honor every year to be a part of the DC area's huge industry award show. I was up on stage with Shawn Yancy of NBC4, and we gave out several awards, all of which are my favorite awards to give because it's to the employees and the general managers and the people on the ground that really don't get the adoration or applause that they so deserve. And every year the speeches just kind of, I don't know, they make me tear up because everybody puts their heart and soul into this business, and it's at these kinds of award shows where you really get to see it. So if you missed who won, you can check that out on the list. And if you didn't see the awards I did, you can check that out on social. Okay, after all the excitement of the Rammys, I did get my bod out of town. Went to the beach, the Delaware beaches. I do go to Fenwick. My sister has a house there. She's very generous. She lets me use it. And it was great to get away, even though I did have a ton of work to do. So a little bit of work, a little bit of play. It's not so bad when you have the beach as your view. Some really good restaurants are popping up at the beach. So there was a time when you went to the beach, it was all like French fries and pizza and maybe subs, right? And not that there's anything wrong with it, because know that this girl totally ate her weight in Thrashers French fries while I was there, totally soaked in malt vinegar, which is my favorite. But this restaurant Drift opened about a year ago. It's in Rehoboth, an amazing oyster program, and also really interesting dishes. They did a French toast with lobster, which sounded, right? It sounded a little weird at first, but I was like, I may be able to get behind this. Anyway, it was delicious. We also went to Harvest, which is in Fenwick. They do a Tomahawk Steak. It's expensive. It's like $175, but it is big and gorgeous, and it's enough to feed four, and it's a delicious thing to do. And also I have to give a shout out to One Coastal, also in Fenwick. They are really using local produce and putting it beautifully on a plate. So there are three sort of upscale ways to enjoy yourself at the beach. Back at home, I did head to Lardente, and it has been a minute because honestly, the guys behind Lardente, as you know, opened up Love Mikado, and that has been sort of my passion as of late. I love going there. I'm obsessed with the barbecue restaurant there, Beloved Barbecue. But I went back to Lardente because I was really craving some pasta. And if you're going to go for some really good pasta in this area, you're going to David Duchesne's Lardente. Also, the place is super vibey, lots of buzz, hard to get a table, make a reservation. And lastly, a new brewery opened up in Kensington, Maryland. And I only tell you that because it's in my backyard. And it's called Baby Cat. And initially when I heard a brewery was opening in my neighborhood, I was like, okay. But now that I've been, I have to tell you, it's such a wonderful addition as an amenity to a neighborhood. They do live music on Fridays and Saturdays. They have an excellent beer program. They don't just make their own, they carry other local beers. They have rosé behind the bar for somebody here at the table. And it's just great to see everybody in the neighborhood come out, support something local, and really enjoy it. So if you're up in my neck of the woods, you can come say hi, but you should definitely check out Baby Cat. Okay, on to today's show. So coffee lovers, I've got you today. So a couple weeks back on this show, with the amazing Daniela Signor, you heard me talk about my experience at Cafe Unito. I gushed about the omakase experience. I had the brewmaster, Francisco Flores. He took me on this great experience of the coffees and also the food of Panama. It was truly an educational tasting tour because it's all about the Panamanian geisha bean. And I now know why the coffee connoisseurs are obsessed. So Cafe Unito is a renowned pioneer in the Panamanian specialty coffee scene. So now I'm going to bring some of that experience and the education to you here on this show. So Francisco Flores is here with me. He's the head roaster at Cafe Unito. But with me also is my surprise guest star who joined sort of last minute addition is Perez Yabea.
Perfect.
Oh my God, thank goodness. Who is one of the co-founders of Cafe Unito. And I'm so excited to talk to you all about it because on this show, I've discussed coffee in general and the multiple waves of coffee. And we're sort of, for those of you who are really into coffee, know that we're sort of in this like fourth wave. So I'm sort of curious, talk to me about how you got into coffee first.
So while living in Panama, I met Veneto, which is the main founder of the company. And we started discussing about the possibility of me joining the group of Cafe Unido. And the idea was behind the whole project was to unite every step of the process that you have contact with coffee. Mm-hmm. So coffee can be, let's say, like tuna, right? You fish the tuna, but if you don't store it well, if you don't cut it well, if you don't slice it well at the very end, you can damage the product, right?
Sure. So
it's the same thing with coffee. And that's where the name comes from, like uniting every point of contact with the coffee so you can attain close to perfect cup at our premises, which is Cafe Unido.
So wait, where did Cafe Unido start?
In Panama.
It did start in Panama.
100%.
Okay.
Out of the necessity because Panamanian coffee was gaining a lot of prominence within the coffee world. Mm-hmm. But in Panama, you couldn't drink Panamanian coffee, which is kind of strange, right?
That is very strange.
Correct. Because all this coffee will go to Korea, China, Japan, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia. So
because the coffee is so expensive?
It is very expensive, and it is purchased through a online bid called Best of Panama. Mm-hmm. Panama has their own bid in which you can, have international power players purchase this coffee, and it is very expensive to keep it in the country. Mm-hmm. So the idea was, why don't we serve this coffee? So Benito, Mario, us started bidding and having coffee from Panama available and doing third wave coffee, more specialty pour overs, which Francisco can get into it, and light roast as well. The idea of Unio also is that we go talk to the farmers, source directly from them with a handshake, and that makes us completely different because we actually go to.
I want your face to stay in front of that mic.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. I don't want to lose what you're saying.
I'm so sorry. I'll move closer.
No.
My bad. No. So the idea was to not only keep it over there, but also have a very honest offering of what we have and what our terroir can show, which is really important.
Right. And so as you became a part of Cafe Unito, and you decided to expand it, because we're going to get into the specifics of the bean and the coffee and the growth and why Panama has become this sort of icon. But as you decided to expand it and bring it into the States, how did you go about introducing it? I mean, there is a huge coffee culture in this country, especially in the last 15 years.
Correct.
As far as finer coffee, people are willing to pay for it. You sort of had if we go way back, there was like the instant coffee, right? And chock-full nuts coffee here,
Correct.
Where people didn't take coffee really seriously. It was an afterthought in restaurants. And then Starbucks sort of came around, and there was this explosion of coffee.
Correct.
With a story, but not necessarily great coffee. But it did open up people's eyes to how good coffee could be and the stories that are behind the beans and the people who are making it. And then I think a lot of people are like, wait a minute, now we can make that coffee good.
Correct.
Really good. And that's changed. I mean, I have friends who literally, when if they come to town or if I'm traveling with them, our mornings are all about where are we going to get coffee and how are we going to get
awesome.
there?
Yeah.
No, and I'm here for that, obviously, as a foodie, I guess, for lack of a better term. But so how did you go about coming to the States and introducing the coffee to the States?
So first of all, we find out that Washington, D.C. particularly has a lot of Panamanian students that come out. So the idea for us was to have one kind of like spot for them to go and feel like they're back at home, and at the same time bring the coffee game or the coffee offering higher. And that's how we all started, exploring the idea of coming out here. And that's when we got an offer from Eden's with a small shop, small enough that we could handle and roast the proper way and execute the proper cup of joe, if you may. So that's how it all came out.
I feel like you have to come up with another thing than cup of joe, but go ahead.
Cup of coffee. But that's how it all came about. And we started exploring the possibility and, started gaining shape. And, here we are. And the amount of love that we've gotten from our community, Panamanian community, and some, worldwide community that loves and cherish a good cup of coffee has been incredible. So the reception has been amazing, to say the least.
Okay, great. We're going to stop there with you because now we're going to get into the coffee.
Sounds
and then
good.
We can talk about the new Cafe Nudo and the food program and the addition sort of to your growth and what's happening. Hi.
Hello.
It's good to see you.
Good to see you again.
So, Francisco, you and I met a couple weeks ago and you took me on this fantastic tour, this omakase experience. And you can't just, Cafe Nudo isn't just about the omakase experience. You can go and have coffee, but can we talk about the Panamanian coffee and its acceleration to sort of the top as one of the best coffees in the world?
Sure. Yeah, as Pedro was telling you, I feel like one of the beautiful things about Panama coffee is how they have put this product out in the world in a different kind of point of view. Innovation has been something that Panama has been driving a lot, and I feel like within the process of creating more exercises that allow the producer to experiment with the product itself has given us something really beautiful as drinkers and as producers. So I feel like for us, one of the main goals is to share with the community what Panama is doing in terms of innovation. And with that, we bring along the idea of putting out this omakase exercise where we intend to share with the community what are they doing in terms of processes, how they're treating varieties, how coffee can be perceived from a different corner. Because as you were saying, like we have been facing different stages in the coffee history where we're standing right now. I feel like it's very beautiful because it's continually redefining itself. Because people are exploring more, trying different methods, trying different processes, different varieties.
Using wine fermentation to it, using other beverage.
Wait, what did you call off air? You called Panamanian coffee the Burgundy?
The Burgundy of coffee,
Yeah, the Burgundy of coffee. I love that.
Because it's very tiny. It resembles Burgundy because it's very small terroir, very unique. And the plants are under a lot of stress and give you the best possible fruit that you can find.
Well, let's talk about that because, I think we hear a lot about terroir and what the vines need to go through for grapes. I mean, there's a lot of conversation out there about that. But let's talk about, where are your coffee plants from and how did it wind up in Panama? And what was it about the areas that they're grown in that create such a fine bean?
I feel like that has to take us back to how coffee comes in the Central Americas in general. And that's actually a very beautiful story in the way I see it. How Panama found geisha was really accidental as a variety.
Because geisha is originally from where?
Ethiopia.
From
geisha.
So, as I'm saying, World Coffee Research has been an institute that has been working there for a really long time, experimenting in different plantations, growing coffee in different regions of the Central America part of the map. And within that journey, some Panamanian fellows found these three inward coffee research offices, and they say like we're looking for a bean that grows in very rough conditions that can, like survive easy the weather situation that we have up there, and we want to give it a shot. And they brought it back to Panama, and the short story is that now this is the most expensive coffee in the world. Like that's how life works, right?
Right. But what is it about this area when we say
it's
that?
a microclimate.
Yeah, high altitude.
Yeah, so let's explain
what
it.
happens with coffee just as it happens with wine, in my own humble understanding of that industry. But
right.
Like there is where something beautiful comes out in the way I say it, the mother nature. It's very unique, and each region in the world has its own thing. So Panama has a beautiful region in a section called David, and it's called Boquete in Chiriquí. And that's a beautiful mountain that allows to producers to grow not only actually coffee, but also different vegetables that are provided to the city.
Peppers, black peppers,
the main
amazing.
source of vegetables for Panamanians.
Wow.
It's amazing. Yeah.
That is amazing.
Yeah. So coffee found a house there too, and the way I describe it, it's that if you think about this part of the country, it's an environment where you can have like a foggy section and then just walk a few steps and it's raining, then it's sunny, and then the soil also is a volcanic terroir, so everything combined.
High altitude as well.
Yes. Right. And so all of that
helps this bean to have a different kind of flavor profile.
And then you have a wind coming in from the Caribbean Sea and another wind coming in from the Pacific, right? And they meet and they create this mist the Panamanians call bareque.
Okay.
And that keeps the plant completely humidified throughout the whole growing season. And coffee plants having a root system that is not deep, like wine, for example. Right. So the older it gets, the deeper it gets to gain all minerals to feed herself.
They spread out?
They spread out.
Okay.
So that humidity, what does is that all those roots get that constant water coming. And that's why you get this amazing fruit. And with what Francisco is saying, that we are not burdened by an AOC, if you may. They can do different processes. They can do.
So when you say AOC, you mean like with wines, like the DOCG, like you
correct.
Don't have accreditation.
Correct. I mean,
to prove.
We don't have to do.
Is that good news or bad news?
That's great news because it pushes you to experiment with different ways of growing your coffee. Okay. Imagine that France can only do
champagne and champagne,
or they have to destem and they have to use wood and they have to, that will put them into a specific flavor profile because everybody will have to use the same process.
I understand that. I'm not fighting you on it, but I guess my question is that at least when a wine says it's champagne, let's do champagne or Bordeaux or whatever, that that certain things are true because they can't put that name on there. Correct. Without it being that way. So is there any concern given the excellence of the Panamanian geisha bean that people could say, oh, well, this is the same, can somebody be a duplicate? Can you get cheated?
I don't think so because
I just have to stop. That coffee smells so good. It's like I want it as a perfume or to scent my house.
I mean, the fruit forward is incredible.
Beautiful. Yeah. Absolutely.
And that's one of the things that we're telling. How many coffees do you taste that give you that particular bouquet without water or anything?
So what is it about? I know because I did the omakase, but since not everybody has, but if we go. I can't decide which to do. Let's take us through the omakase of the flavors and what we're looking for at each and why you would go in and try different coffees and what we would go through. And then we can sort of talk about the experience at Cafe Unito because you can just go and get a cup of coffee, right? Yeah. So let's go through it.
I feel like, when we came out with this idea, one of the things that excited me a lot, and I'm going to combine here two different thoughts, but very important. We wanted to pair it with food, and we wanted to try the exercise that Ferez and Veneto and Mario has experienced in the past. The idea of being in the food industry for a really long time brought us to this kind of intention of pairing some food with some coffees and how they can match, how we can reinvent the way that we serve coffee and creating people also a different appreciation of it, right? So we try to take it in a very intimate space where we also prepare some bites as you tasted it.
Right, which were delicious.
Many of them are very coffee influenced as well. Giovanna, the chef, has done an amazing job putting together.
She's very talented.
She's very talented.
Incredibly talented,
Yeah.
yes.
So the omakase has that goal, like to provide you with an opportunity to taste not only the variety itself, but also different processes because each.
Well, let's talk about those different.
Yeah.
So if we can dig in a little bit about those different processes, because I think for the layperson, they're like, oh, I mean, that's just a really good cup of coffee.
Yeah.
So one of the things I thought was really interesting, and that I really loved was that you made a tea out of the husks. And that I was so interested by that.
Because you forget it's a fruit, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
That, but just, if you think of like watermelon rind or orange peel or all the things that are utilized in different ways.
So on that end, I feel like one thing that is important to highlight is that coffee has been in the need of refining itself, especially for the small producer. You know how in the world we perceive this as a commodity that, as you said, we find it pretty much everywhere. So I feel like as human beings, we lost sight on the appreciation of that.
Yeah. And nowadays, if you go like on that note, when you go to like a Michelin restaurant, the tomatoes are grown on their full moon, and I picked up that night, and the wine,
the biodynamic
wine is
right?
And then at the end, they're like, "Do you want some coffee?"
Right.
It's like, come on, dude, you're giving me all this concert of exposure, and then in the coffee, you're like, "You want some coffee?"
Right.
So. That necessity is what he's talking about.
But don't you feel like, I feel in restaurants, certainly restaurants of note, that the addition of a coffee program, listen, it's an expense.
It is.
But that more and more people are sort of embracing it.
100%. And that's what I was trying to say. Like when you think about it, for producer, it was also very hard to make this business sustainable. Okay? Because out of the sea market at this point, for example, you're still not reaching not even $1 per pound.
Right.
So the way that Panamanian people reinvented themselves for me is very, very admirable, if that's a word in English, because that helped a lot to other producers to rethink what to do.
Okay.
So, for example, Gist has a experimenting exercise in coffee came out of a necessity. For many years ago, I remember when they were touring around in Guatemala and El Salvador with some winemakers because they wanted to improve the flavor of the coffee, but they maybe had not such a good variety in terms of flavor, not such a good terroir like some other areas of the world like Ethiopia has. So winemakers have been trying to support coffee producers in order to see what happens if you play around a little bit more with the bacteria. But now, to put this all together simple, how this helps to the producer and how this changed the game. It helps to the producer because they can have different flavor profiles out of the natural process, but different results from different varieties. And as a result, you offer that to a customer that will perceive the drink in a different way. So they will pay more for it.
Right.
Because we're not talking about a bitter, earthy drink that you got in the X coffee shop, but there was a whole process that gave it more value. So that comes along with the changes in the industry and on the back end that people don't see that often.
Well, but I also think a lot of people, clearly incorrectly, think that the bean is not as important as the roasting.
Yeah.
That there's sort of, that if you roasted it correctly, you could coax the flavor out of it.
No,
right?
Not really.
And that's, as I'm saying, I mean, all these things have changed within the last 25 years, for me, in a good way. Because now we can find a window that has coffee growers, for example, to negotiate, as Ferris was saying, directly with the person that is going to sell it without passing through a single exporter of the coffee, which was a thing in Central America. And I'm still having some coffee land down there. And, my mom's still taking the coffee to a main mill where it gets collected and sent in bulk. Right? Wow. So price is not going to be the same. If I do the handshake with Ferris and say, hey, Ferris, this is my coffee from Francisco for Unido, like that. That has changed in a good way, the way we perceive coffee. It goes along with not only a flavor experience, but also with a social aspect of it, which is, for me, one of the most exciting things when we talk about coffee.
So when we go through the different profiles of coffee, is it all about, it's all the same bean-ish? Like it's are we trying from different farms and then you're roasting them in certain ways?
When you come to Café Unido, you try different varieties. You try different.
But it's all geisha.
No,
not really.
That's what I'm saying.
We have
Okay.
geisha, pacamara,
Yeah, so
maragogipe.
you know, like, and this is another amazing thing about what's happening in Panama and the US. Producers are so motivated to push themselves. You know, like this auction that Ferris was saying earlier has been for me a very positive impact for the producers, because they have seen on one hand that they can have a better price for their product with these private auctions.
Correct.
Which push them to work harder in terms of, okay, so they are experimenting not only with processes, but also growing different varieties.
Okay, so when you say processes, both of you, what does, I don't know what that means. What
So
does
you
that mean? So to me, when I think processes, I think after the berry's been picked.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
That is correct. Sometimes
right
are washed, sometimes it's natural, sometimes it's honey, sometimes it's ASD, anaerobic fermentation.
I didn't know anything you just said.
So washed is when you literally wash the coffee. Yeah. So then you have natural that you let it dry under the sun and you develop those sugars start, rotting, if you may, and fermenting, and that adds a flavor profile to the bean itself, right? So as it goes, and the same thing happens, let's say, with natural wine, right?
Right.
So they let, the fermentation to start the process by itself, so that, you get a funkier wine, if you may.
Right.
So the same thing is with coffee. So all of these processes, Panama has, they can do it with no problem. There's other countries that have to do wash coffee.
I'll take a little here. Thank you.
You have some.
No, that's yours. We had it.
Some other countries have to have their coffee washed no matter what. So the flavor profile.
They have to have it washed because
it's part of the AOC, the association.
Okay. Got you. Thank you.
Yeah. And in resources too. Like that's again one thing that I like to highlight about Panama coffee. Like the producers themselves have put into their shoulders the idea of, again, innovating, creating different alternatives, experimenting with what they do in terms of process, as Ferris was saying. I mean, Joseph, the guy that we were talking about the other day with 90 Plus Coffee, for example,
right?
He's all the time going very deep into what to do with fermentation, and you will try coffees out of what he does that from there.
So it's
blowing your head.
So coffee, when we talk about fermentation, do all coffees go through that fermentation process? I mean, no.
I would say yes, in the natural state of it, because I mean, even when we talk about a wash coffee, as Ferris was saying, technically removing the fruit out of it.
I just have to tell you, it tastes like chocolate.
Right now.
Is it?
Oh my God.
And if you let it cool down, the coffee will open, just like wine. So once it cools down, it develops different nuances of fruitiness to it. So save a little bit for the last.
I will. No, and just so you know, I mean, I like coffee, but I'm a tea drinker.
Okay.
I drink tea.
Okay. Geisha is a very tea-like.
It has, because it's so floral and it's got a lot of layers, which is, I think, why. I mean, I don't mind coffee and I like it, and I certainly have a palate for it, but I just don't gravitate towards it.
Understood.
But this just is so, I hate to say rich, because that connotates heaviness. It's not heavy.
No, not really.
It's really just, it's just a lovely drink.
And so, back to what you were saying earlier,
yes.
when you come to it again, you not only try Panama Geisha, that's actually the staple of Panamanian coffee, 100%. But the beautiful thing is that now producers are also experimenting with other varieties. They have, as I say, Bacamara, Caplaí, Excel 28, Whoosh Whoosh, and they're coming out with a.
That sounds like all strains of marijuana. I just want to say for the record. But go ahead.
I mean, like wine.
Indeed.
Right?
Yes.
I mean, talk about all the grapes that are.
Pinot Noir,
around.
Cabernet Sauvignon, Chardonnay, Aligoté.
Right.
And that's something that for me gives us an opportunity to appreciate this drink in a different way. Because you can get to Nido and try one day a Pacamara, and then, why not try a Caplaí or try a Geisha, and you will see that even though it's the same seed, they taste very different.
Well, so that sort of brings us back to Café Unido. In so many people are so accustomed, Americans or people who live in the States are just really accustomed going into coffee shops. There's a lot of coffee shops out there that sort of say they have a commitment to coffee, and some execute it and some kind of do it. So how do you go about educating the consumer when they come into your coffee shop? You have the new space up on, is that 9th?
Shaw.
Yeah,
it's
Shaw.
901 W
Right
Street.
by 930 Club, the new Whole Foods.
Yeah.
So there's parking.
There you go.
It's important. It's important for us
It
drivers.
is important.
So how do you go about, so I come in and I'm like, yeah, I'll take a cup of coffee. You've got, what do you have, like a minute and a half? Like, what do you have
or less
to tell me, right? Like, what do you have to be like,
10 seconds.
Right. What do you have to tell me to say, okay, so this is why, or, you know, if I'm like, whatever it costs, $4 a cup of coffee, whatever, you know, and you're like, no, this is why. How do you engage with the consumer in a way that gives them that little nugget of information that they know what they're drinking is different and why?
So, you know, like in the way I see it, when you think about like the daily basis and how we perceive coffee up to date, as you were saying earlier, it's a matter of trying to create that eye contact, that connection with the people that come in, right? And it won't work all the time.
No, because some people don't want it. Right.
That's fine. But there is one that always asks, what is that Acacia thing? What is a pour over?
What is a pour over? Yeah,
and when they
that's
ask
the question
me
you
that,
get.
they give me the key. You know?
Wait, what's a
pour over? Because
pour
in the
over?
menu, in the menu, we only say pour over, and then we have market price because it changes.
Right.
know? So when they see pour over and MP, they're like, "What is this?" And that's when you grab them.
Yeah.
So you didn't get you brought the pour over today, but you forgot the filter, and that's your favorite way.
Yeah, he loves it.
So let's talk about that because, you know, growing up, my mom is a coffee drinker, and she, you know, that's how she made coffee in the morning. Like she did she heated water in a kettle and it's not like she had great coffee beans or anything like that. This is the 70s, but she, you know, did the pour over. And, you know, now we're in a time of coffee convenience, right? You know, the Keurigs or the Nespressos. And so what is it about this slow, intentional process with the pour over?
Well, I feel like, as we were discussing out of record earlier, it's a matter of preference more than anything. I like a clean cup of coffee.
Okay.
I like better the coffee when, you know, it's less thicker in the mouthfeel, for example. And you can find it more in a French press or espresso, that intensity of the espresso shot is beautiful.
Right.
Don't get me wrong. But it's not necessarily my jam. You know, like I like more coffee that it's more delicate, or the nuances are like push it down a little bit so I can drink a little more, you know. And still, it's more a matter of how you like coffee, right? But you were mentioning something very important, though. I mean, like there are so many avenues to prepare coffee up today, and I do feel like innovation has brought out also opportunities for us to experiment with different kind of ways to prepare coffee. Like, for instance, now we just release a RTD product, which is a cold brew. It's a flash brew.
Okay.
It's very amazing.
We launched it in Panama first, and we will hope to have it here by November.
So you can buy it in a bottle?
It comes in a can.
Oh, neat.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you know, like...
pretty nice.
Yeah.
It is nice.
As of today, you can find... I know that you can find ready-to-drink coffee out in the market. I'm aware of it. But how good it is the question, right? Like, and that's... where we
and also how it maintains itself.
Correct.
Right? Because you find a lot of them in glass bottles, which I'm always surprised by because there can be deterioration with a glass bottle.
Correct.
Right? Sunlight, things of that nature.
Like, for instance, when it comes to ready to brew coffee, something convenient, right? Like for many years there were like thoughts about how we make this happen without compromising that much the flavor of the coffee, because the best stage of it is the whole bean, as you might see it very often on a specialty coffee shops, right? So the moment you grind it, it starts to degas quicker, so it loses more quick its flavors attributes. So thinking about the idea of having ground coffee ready just to pour water is not exciting for a specialty coffee drinker.
Right.
But there are some options now in the market. Like, for instance, we do have one, Drip Kit, that it's an amazing product. I mean, like when I saw it the first time when I joined it, it even blew my head.
Really?
It was one of the first things that I saw when I came to the roastery, you know, like, and
we were preparing coffee out of that thing, and I was like, okay, this is ground coffee. You have it in a little
Instead of
package. You can take 10 of them and just go for a camping trip, and you don't need to bring all this paraphernalia, but just need hot water.
And that's it. Yeah.
And I was
yummy?
like, okay,
It is very yummy.
it was good.
We'll send you some so you can
Yeah.
have them, and
Yeah, I'm
maybe
just
you can have
curious.
them in the next show.
Yes.
Now,
Just to try it.
for a coffee religious person that
I
is
get it.
very conservative, they always will say that it's not the same.
Of course.
But I tell them, like, look, if you're traveling and you don't want that crappy coffee on the airplane, you just ask for hot water.
and put
And
it
you
in.
just
Use
put it,
this,
yeah.
and you're gonna
Right.
have a good cup of coffee.
Right.
And
You
we
know?
do it with geisha. We do it also
Yeah.
with RPA, which is our espresso blend. So
Okay, can we just quickly, and then we didn't really get to everything that I wanted to get to, but
don't worry.
so can we talk about the blend, like espresso? How does a grind work, and how does a coffee become for espresso as opposed to a regular cup of coffee?
Okay.
I feel like I should know this, but I
Yeah,
don't.
that's a good question. I feel
It
like
is.
there's a lot of thoughts behind this conversation. Actually.
Mhm.
I always tell people like coffee, once it's roasted, it can be processed or prepared any way you want,
Okay.
including espresso, pour over, blah blah blah. It just depends on how you like your coffee.
Mm-hmm.
So if your expectations are to have a very chocolatey kind of flavor when you pull a shot of espresso, maybe you don't want to get a too light coffee.
Okay.
Maybe you don't want to get some varieties too, or some processes,
Correct.
because
Mhm.
that's going to change the flavor. But with that being said, that doesn't mean that you cannot make an espresso out of this.
Okay.
What will happen is that you will get a very
Intense.
citrus flavor potentially. Like in terms of acidity, it's going to be very acid. Like,
Okay,
but
acid
very
forward.
citrus.
Sure.
Actually, to be specific.
Yeah.
And maybe that's not your jam. You want something that you want to pair with, how do you call milk,
Mhm.
right? And so you're not looking for that. You're looking for something more like what we do with La Arpilla, for example, which is
Right.
a blend of two varieties, Caturra and Catuai. We roast it just to be a nominee roast, we call it. And it's a drink that you can prepare on a French press, you can make it on espresso, you can make it on a pour over. It's going to be fine. But flavor-wise, because of the variety and because of the processes,
Mhm.
it's going to be very chocolate-like, very
Yeah.
approachable. Nothing crazy, nothing that you cannot
Right.
mix with sugar and milk, but more likely like a very standard.
So you have no judgment if people put milk in the coffee?
Not at all.
Okay, I'm just asking.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
no,
How
funny.
about you? Do you have judgment?
Not at all.
Not at
Although
all.
I don't do milk. But
Yeah.
I don't have
Well, I
judgment
mean,
on that.
to me, putting milk in this would be a crime. Like
Agreed.
you would just
Agreed.
Well, I mean, if you
But
ask me,
that's-
if I don't judge, I don't judge.
right.
If my heart gets broken, it gets broken. That I gotta be transparent.
Right.
It will kill us, actually.
Right.
Be
I mean,
You're
honest.
killing me, but it's
I mean,
all right.
I always assumed cappuccino, latte, like all those things were to hide the flavor of the coffee.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
the
to an
milk.
extent, it is. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like it's a way to make the coffee taste better because it's a
Or taste different other than
Right.
coffee.
Yeah.
you know.
Other than
Some of
coffee.
them taste
all
just like
that
caramel.
has been a very cultural thing because if you think about how we were roasting coffee back in the 70s,
Mhm.
80s, 90s at the latest, we were roasting a little darker because we wanted to standardize the flavor. And
Right.
It became like a better.
the bitter,
bitter,
right? Like
yeah.
it was all about the bitter.
Yeah, and so for some of
Oily. And
for some of us,
Especially espresso. Like
Yeah.
when I think about like my first time in Italy back in the 80s and having an espresso and then being like totally wired afterwards. But like it was so bitter and so strong and there was an oily
Yeah.
consistency to it. I mean, the process and going
Yeah.
to the snack bar and just
Correct.
doing it was, that was more fun than anything else. But it's not like you were like, oh, this is delicious,
Well, and that's what I'm saying. Like now you are on a stage where you can find different options in the market where you can taste the flavor of the coffee
Mhm.
closer to its original stage of flavor because
Correct.
we don't roast it that much. We try to preserve a little more of the
the
variety.
fruitiness to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and obviously it's there. Okay. I unfortunately have to wrap up the show.
It's
Sounds
all
good.
But we will definitely circle back at some point
Don't worry.
because I know that you'll be doing more things,
We'll be here.
both of you, in and around the DC area
We'll be
and
here.
beyond. Can you tell everybody where we can find the locations here in DC and
Absolutely.
the products?
So you can find us. We're also online, www.cafeonil.com. You can
Mhm.
get e-commerce sent to anywhere in the States.
Okay.
We are also located in La Cosecha, which is a food market by Eden's in Noma area, I believe that's the name.
Mhm.
And also
Union
in
Market
Shawn,
District.
Unimarket District, and also in Shaw 901 W Street Northwest,
Right.
where we serve all-day brunch, and we have a fantastic selection of coffees and natural wine to go with it.
Excellent. Excellent. I know. I haven't been for brunch yet. It's on
Don't
my
worry.
list.
You have to.
I know.
Please.
It's on my
It
list.
is amazing.
I hear it's
It's amazing.
fantastic.
Giovanna does an amazing job.
Well, having had a couple of her bites at the omakase, can we just wrap up on the omakase very quickly? So how can people participate? Like, how does somebody get the omakase?
Yeah,
Or
so
talk.
we can do it through talk
Mhm.
at this point. They can also just contact us by info@cafeunido.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm
And we'll be
telling
more than
people
happy
about
to help.
it, and they're like, so do I just call, make a reservation? What do I do?
You can do talk, email, or you can DM us on Instagram
Yeah,
as well.
Instagram.
Okay.
You know, like anywhere you find us online, you can just send us a message and we will get it.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you
Lovely.
both. Just give me a
Thank you
second.
for having us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm just going to wrap up quickly. Everything you heard here today, you can find on the listareyouonit.com. You can also find everything on my Instagram feed at NYCCINELLIS. I'm still on Twitter for the moment. I am on Threads, LinkedIn, and of course, this show, as well as all the others, is on YouTube. So please subscribe. Any questions that you have for me or these two wonderful gentlemen, please. All those platforms, you have plenty of ways to ask me questions. I'm happy to get back to you or put you in touch with both of them. So much going on in and around the area. Get out there, be safe, and have a delicious week.